Welcome to the Page One Podcast, a podcast featuring a variety of guests and thought leaders on topics ranging from digital marketing, sales channel strategies, influencer marketing, best-in-class product launches, and all the details about how to accelerate sales. Now, here's your host, Luke Peters.
Thanks for joining us on the Page One Podcast. I'm your host, Luke Peters, CEO of New Era Appliances and Retail Band Digital Strategy Agency. Business owners, do you wish you had someone to create a custom strategic plan to grow your online sales? Someone who would show you how to execute it with the team you have? That's what we do. If you're lost, we can help you right now. Just find me on LinkedIn or email me at luke@retailband.com. In this episode, you're going to hear from Melissa Kieing, CEO and founder of Packit, on how, as a single mom, Melissa grew the world's original freezable lunch bag into a household name. From her humble beginnings as a struggling single mom to a CEO of the #1 fastest growing women-owned business, Inc. 500 in 2014, Melissa's story is the ultimate American dream. Packit was born out of necessity. The idea came to Melissa when her kids would complain about warm and mushy blueberries in their school lunches. From there, after extensive trial and error, the first prototype of the new iconic Packit freezable gel line lunch bag was developed. Since its founding in 2009, under Melissa's leadership, Packit's patented freezable consumer products have been solving cold chain challenges for families and individuals worldwide, and the company has experienced steady double-digit growth. Melissa, thanks for joining us on the Page One Podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Awesome. So I have kids, and my wife and daughter, they automatically knew what your product was. So that's great. You have a lot of brand identity out there. But for the audience, if you'd mind describing the product a little bit more.
Sure. So I guess the core product, like the product the concept that was the impetus for the company is, like you mentioned a little bit, I was struggling as a mom trying to pack healthy lunches for my kids and really frustrated that you couldn't put healthy food in a lunch bag and have it stay fresh come lunchtime. You've got options like putting baggies of ice in, or you could put those little gel pucks in that never really work and go missing, never make it home. So the concept was to integrate the gel as a freezable liner into the liner of our bag. So you simply fold the bag up and you store the entire bag collapsed in the freezer. And when you pull that out in the morning and shake it open, the walls of the bag are actually frozen. So you never have to add ice or gel pack, and our product keeps food safe temperatures for up to 10 hours.
Yeah, and you got like really cool designs and colors, and you guys make it really fun. You guys, the audience, you can check it out on the website. We'll get more into this later on, but where are the products distributed?
Yeah, so retail across the U.S., kind of your list of expected players: Target, Walmart, Bed Bath, Container Store, Whole Foods, Amazon, of course, supermarket and drug, and then internationally as well.
Yeah. You're like nonchalantly, and you name off every large retailer that you're in store. So trust me, that's very difficult to do. So that's pretty cool. It's a great story.
Oh, thanks.
Okay. So let's dive into the business a little bit. How many team members do you have? Do you have warehouses? How do you handle distribution?
We have around 20 people in our office here in Westlake Village, California. We have a 3PL. We don't have our own warehouse, so we have everything in a 3PL, and that's also here in Southern California. So everything we manufacture in Asia, in China, so everything comes in through Long Beach and then is warehoused at our 3PL in Chino, California.
Great. And those 20 people or so, I'm sure you have the typical, the finance and sales and marketing. On the creative side, curious, how the team looks. You guys are doing, because you got some really fun designs. So is the team creative heavy, or do you just have a lean but strong team?
No, we always have run very lean and mean. I mean, I think everyone within the company is, embodies that kind of what we always call like gangster entrepreneur spirit, just kind of no job is too small or too little. If something has to get done, everybody is all hands on deck. And we have a sign that hangs in our design center. It says, work hard and be nice to people. Like it's just, it's pretty simple life principles.
That's great. And what type of ERP or business system do you guys operate to keep all the glue together, or the business glued together?
We started on QuickBooks, like most, and then we transitioned to NetSuite probably about 8 years ago now. And it's been great.
Oh, wow. So you guys are the early adopters.
Yeah, fully comprehensive, integrated. We do a lot of EDI processing with our retail partners, and then obviously integration with our 3PL.
That's awesome. And on staff, do you guys have EDI and NetSuite experts, or do you outsource that and just work in implementation team?
I think everybody is very well versed in using NetSuite. It touches every piece of the company in some capacity, whether it's sales and contact management, accounting, logistics, supply chain operations. Everyone really has a hand in that. It really is kind of, the pulse and the heartbeat of the company. I guess everyone, becomes an expert to help it manage their day-to-day workload. We don't necessarily have one leadership team expert.
Yep.
We would defer, outreach to NetSuite directly if we needed any custom projects built or put together to help us with any particular need that might come up.
Yeah, that makes sense. And also, since you have 3PL, it does save some complexity because you don't have to have, the warehouse end of it, which can be a pretty big piece. So that's good. And then, are you able to share maybe your most important KPI, maybe a number that you really is so important to you? And it would just be interesting to see how you think about that.
Yeah. I mean, you and I talked a little bit about this. And I think if I look at, when we first started the business, we would get super excited about getting placement at retail and, always had our eye on door count, which is really exciting. Obviously at that time in the business, it's really exciting to get that door count, but you are always watching POS and is it moving off shelf and out the door? And then of course, everything comes back to gross margin and profitability. And we have a deal sheet, what we refer to as a deal sheet template, which is basically a P&L by SKU that is run for every sales opportunity. And that has to be approved before a program can move forward. Really keep an eye on what all of the ancillary expenses are on any program. So we have insight into some are profitable and some aren't as much, but at least you go into it knowing what you're getting into.
That's awesome. Yeah. So you have an econ model and all the deals. And yeah, exactly. Just like you said, you got to know that you're making money or that, this work is going to pay off at the end. And sometimes you're going to accept lower margins. And sometimes there's a big back end. Makes a lot of sense. Why don't we now transition to the theme, which is, you being a single mom, starting this brand. And just to give the audience a little bit more context, you have 3 kids. And at the time, I think your kids were 7, 11, and 13. Mm-hmm. I think we were talking about that. So you had your hands full and you decided to start a business at the same time. So why don't you describe, how you felt when, just your first month in business and just kind of describe what that looked like.
Yeah. I mean, listen, it's so funny. My personality is I'm not living unless I'm drinking at the fire hose. And that really is what keeps me going every day and the reason I jump out of bed. And now we have a lot of our staff and employees now having babies. And it's really interesting to look at where I am in my life where my kids are older, 2 are now out of the house. I just have Emma here at home. When you're in it and you're living it, as a single mom with the kids, like anything, you only know what you know. So I don't think in the moment I've really had time to sit back and go, holy crap, this is hard. But now that my kids are older and I'm looking back at other employees, I'm like, oh my goodness, managing all of this and having young babies, I think it has put an interesting perspective on it for me. When you have babies in their home and they're crying all night, you only know what you know. You just get up and you do it and you make it happen. But when you get that interesting perspective of reflection through someone else's experience, yeah, it's parenting, and work and, the full lives that we lead, especially now with all of the complexities of the environment that we're living through now. It's a lot of work. I think that's why at the end of the day, you really have to love what you do and be excited and be passionate about it. And it doesn't feel like work.
Yeah. And a lot of things made sense. You have that entrepreneurial drive, but when you're working probably twice as hard as anybody else. And I think what that does is it's just kind of if somebody runs marathons versus running a mile, they understand there's a lot of it is psychological, right? And you just have to keep pushing. And so it sounds like you had to push through so much at the beginning. How do you budget your time? I mean, because at that time, the kids are going to be in school. So you're going to have to be doing drop-offs and pickups and all kinds of other things. At the same time you're working, did you have any particular schedule or a way, that you kept yourself organized to get through the days?
Yeah, I have had a woman in my life that I've been so blessed to have. She started as Emma's babysitter when Emma was 2. And as I started the company, she would fill in and help out. And she's still with me today, 12, 13 years later, probably 14 years later, and is still my assistant today. And she just had her first baby. So it's really fun to see someone who helped me kind of keep it all together and, help take care of my children when I needed someone to step in because I was traveling. It's really fun to see it come full circle. And my kids are older now and getting to experience her being a new mom and still being part of the Packit team. It's really fun.
Yeah, that is a great story. And then, when you're in the beginning and you're starting this out, and I guess all entrepreneurs are going to have this hurdle, and the same question could be asked, but you had a couple of hurdles in front of you. So how did you gain confidence in yourself and your idea, to turn this business into a reality? Did you have prior successes? What allowed you to say, hey, I'm going to do this?
Initially, I think I was just so excited about the concept and the product and knowing that it was something that didn't exist and knowing it was something that I wanted and needed to simplify my life. And then more conversations I had with other people, realizing other people also had a need for this. That really was the motivation behind, keeping me going, even though a lot of conversations started with no. I was so passionate about it and determined to see it come to market. Yeah. I mean, early on, and this was my first stab at a business like this, you're convinced that there's a roadmap out there and you're convinced that everyone else kind of has it figured out and knows which turns and steps to make. And I think once I became comfortable realizing that there is no roadmap, there is no one has a course that is defined for success, that you've got to take chances and, educate yourself as best as you can and make the best decisions. I'm a big gut person and I rely heavily on when something feels right, making those decisions. And, not every decision turns out being the right decision in that moment, but it's something that you learn from. And the experience of being able to identify that early on and pivot and, not focus on bad decisions, but learn from them and keep moving forward is, I think, once you humble yourself and realize that you can make it happen, you can create your own path. And I think I became more comfortable with running the business once I embraced that.
Yeah. And I think what made a lot of sense is, there isn't that roadmap, like you said, and then we all want to think there is. But then after you have gotten some success, you look back and you realize that the people that you're competing with or your colleagues or other successful people, they're kind of just like you. Like they just kind of just figured it out also. And that can give more confidence when you realize that, before you start, you're looking up and you're wondering, wow, how can I ever get there? And once you're there, you realize, what? It's not actually, it didn't require some skill set that was impossible to attain. And then also kind of being naive at the beginning can help as well, right? You just kind of go for it without overthinking it. With that, what specific advice would you give to other women or other mothers that are starting their own businesses?
I think one of my strengths, and is always something I recommend that anyone, women specifically, embrace, is be willing to ask the silly question, be willing to reach out and ask for help. There are a lot of people out there who are happy. I'm happy to pass along all of the mistakes that I've made in an effort to help someone avoid those. And I think there are a lot of people out there like that. So just, being willing to acknowledge that you don't have all the answers and no question is too simple or too small or too silly. And really putting one foot in front of the other is, daily is what keeps everything moving forward.
Yeah, I love that quote. Ask silly questions. But I think it's so true. And I think it's important for everybody to be, so curious and open-minded and just have that attitude where you're going to be the one raising your hand while everybody else is kind of embarrassed to ask the dumb question. So I completely agree with you. I think it's great advice. Why don't we pivot, to your business and the brand Packit? It'd be great to hear the story of how you got in store. You're in so many different stores, which is just a massive accomplishment. How'd you get in?
Okay. So after I had the idea for the product, I started doing research online, realizing there really wasn't anything out there. I had an idea in my mind of what this should look like and how it should function. Started researching materials to be used, like thermal gel materials, freezing them, hanging them up in my home, as simple as that. Like laid all the materials out across my dining room table. I had ordered what I thought would work as a liner for the inside of the bag. And when it came, it was one of those hard plastic chair, like goes under your office chair that you can roll around on. And I was like, well, that's not going to work. So literally walking past my bathroom one day, seeing the shower curtain hanging there, I was like, oh, okay, that could work. So I pulled that down, cut everything apart, pinned it together, took it to the dry cleaners, and she sewed the first bag together. So at that point, I had a prototype in hand. I was able to have conversations then with friends. That led to an early round of friends and family financing. I started going to trade shows. Trade shows are awesome. You are among a community of entrepreneurs, and I got a lot of great feedback. I learned that others were interested in what I was doing. And at that trade show, we met with Target, and I ended up getting a meeting with Target like early on. I think my business cards at the time still said entrepreneur mom.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. And I was still working out of my kitchen. So you can imagine, like, I'm terrified. I get this meeting. I'm going to fly to Minneapolis. And I'm at this point really struggling with who we are and the perception of who we are. And what did I think the perception of who we were at that time needed to be in order to be validated enough to put on a shelf like Target, right? And this is where, when you're just starting, like all of these insecurities and the fear of, am I doing this right? And you're feeling like you have to present yourself as something to be accepted and, to get that foot in the door. So I really struggled with that. And going into that Target meeting, made the decision to go with our true, authentic story, which was the one I just told you. I had an idea for a product. It was something I needed. My children needed it. It would make my life simpler. I think other people should have it too. And I think that throughout, my journey, that has really built a great affinity for people to the brand. Just having that connection with our audience has been a great brand building story for us. However, in that meeting with Target, they passed. And they passed because with our product, the uniqueness of our product is on the inside, and it's not necessarily obvious at point of sale. So if the customer encounters it at point of sale and doesn't really understand how the product works, they were worried that the perceived value and the price point, at that point we entered the market with, we at $19.99, we were on the higher end price point of what that category was. And if people didn't understand how our products work and the value add that they bring in the technology, it might not work for them at retail. So Target ended up passing.
And Melissa, this is before you had a sellable product, right? So this is still, or were you actually producing the product at this point?
No, we had a product at this point. We had done a small production run. So we had product.
Okay. So you had product, and just so the audience knows, this is, I know she's described it a couple of times, but I just want to make sure, especially if you guys don't have kids, because if you have kids, this would make like complete sense, because I've lost freezer packs and ice packs a million times. The kids leave them at school and stuff. But it's literally like a lunch bag or a sandwich or a lunch container. And it's a little thicker, and it's got the gel on the inside. It's kind of flexible, and you can stick it in the freezer and freeze it. And how big was the one that you were pitching initially? Was it like the lunch box?
Yeah, it's like a lunch bag. It really is our same hero product today, and our kind of most popular and recognizable product today are just our original Packit lunch bags.
Okay, cool. All right, great. So continue on from that point.
Yeah, so Target passed, and leaving that meeting, I realized that we were going to have to get creative. We were going to have to do something out of the box to make sure that if we were to get an opportunity with a retailer like that we were going to educate the consumer before they hit retail, so we would be able to move it off the shelf. And this was 9 years ago. So back when people were still watching TV, we didn't really have an option. We had to watch commercials, and direct response TV was, if you had a product that worked for video and direct response, that model was working really well at the time. So we produced and ran a 2-minute, like as seen on TV type direct response commercial that it ended up running for about 2.5 years. And it was wildly successful. Our product, we learned early on that once you educate the consumer on how it works, it's a no-brainer. Like, it's one of those super simple, smart products that just makes sense. So using TV and video to explain to the customer who's at home how the product works, the direct response, and at that point it was direct to consumer. We were shipping direct to consumer, absolutely exploded for us.
And that was at that $19.99 price point. And I always look at those ads and wonder, how are they making money? Because the shipping's got to eat into that. But it sounds like you guys either had enough margin, or did you have to charge? Did the consumer also end up paying shipping on that?
They ended up paying shipping on it, yeah.
Oh, there you go.
And no, we didn't making a lot of money. And we weren't doing it to make a lot of money direct to consumer. We were really doing it to build the brand, to market, and to capture the attention of retail and get on retail shelves, which is actually, exactly what happened after going to IHA, which is then where we launched. The first time we really launched at a trade show, it was the Chicago IHA trade show at the time, now Inspired Home. But that was the launch platform for us after the very small one that we had done in Vegas where we met Target. So we launched at this show, and I met with Bed Bath & Beyond, and I had been calling on them and calling on them and calling on them, and they'd so kindly passed. And in Chicago at that show, our buyer at the time walked up and she held up her cell phone and she hit play, and it was a video of her daughter reciting our Packit commercial.
Oh, that's so cool. What a great story.
And she's like, all right, let's give this a try. So Bed Bath was our first retail partner, and that was pretty awesome. Like when we launched with them, you could walk in, and Bed Bath buys they can buy their stores. So each store manager can opt in to bring in a huge statement for a product. And we could walk in at any given moment and see literally like huge floor to ceiling columns of Packit bags.
And how did you finance this at the beginning? So now we're talking about 1.5 years or 2 years in, right? And you just had that friends and family round at the beginning. Were you, making any revenue some other way at this point, or enough to kind of keep the business going along? And, because I know, when retailers buy, the terms obviously are not always in your favor, and, there can be a lot of challenges on that end. So how did how'd you cover that part?
Yeah, well, we did have huge growth. We went from 150,000 to 7 million in sales in year one, and then doubled that in year two. So we were growing very quickly. As you know, you're spending your capital to buy inventory to keep up with demand like that. So I did end up taking on a financial partner, and we did debt financing. This was like 2009 to 2011, where finding capital and having access to debt was, with the financial crisis, next to impossible. And we took on some pretty expensive money.
What a great story. I mean, it is so hard.
But it kept us going.
Yeah, to grow that quickly is so hard. And also to be new into retail, it's hard even to structure the deals, because there's so many ways you can lose. And there just is, on the back ends and the returns and all that kind of stuff. Did you have, some guidance or some help when you were, actually dealing with the terms?
I did, but, honestly, I had to accept terms that anyone with experience and better judgment and would have said, oh God, no. But at the time, we just didn't have a lot of options. And, I think unfortunately you get put into that position where even if I, had known better, I didn't have the opportunity at the time and in the moment.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Sometimes you have to, take that stepping stone to get to the next level.
Wow. What a great story and ideal partner to start with, especially back then. They had a, incredible growing brand and, a lot of visibility in store. And so did that help you get back into Target?
It did. Yep, it did. So that we quickly, Target and Walmart and many others soon followed after. And then, with direct response and direct to consumer, once, as long as you're generating a media return that makes sense and it's covering your media spend, it still makes sense to keep running that campaign. But we started to have retail sales available at retail, and our media returns were declining because the commercial wasn't throwing off the same return because people were buying at retail. There is that life cycle where you realize that it's done what it needed to do, and you now are off and running with retail. So after 2.5 years, we shut that down and transitioned into full wholesale business through retail.
And then let's pivot here and talk about building a team. So now you had to build a team. You're doing a lot of things at once. You didn't have experience talking to buyers, and that can be really difficult to navigate all the terms. Plus, now there's, financials and all kinds of accounting that when, $100,000 business, obviously you can do on QuickBooks, and then quickly, you ramped up there. So you probably had to build a team on that side as well. Be interesting to hear the story of how you built the team.
Yeah. I mean, I've really learned to look at myself and be able to identify what my strengths are and where my weaknesses are, and making sure that you're finding strong team players with strengths that fill in your weaknesses, and not being intimidated by someone else's expertise, knowing that, oh my God, like the strongest person you can bring in to your greatest weakness is the best advantage you can get on a team. So yeah. And, we still, like we were saying, with 20 people, like we still run very lean and mean. And I think it's a part of the culture. Like we don't have layers. We don't have managers of managers. We have people who really are invested in the business and the culture and the company and want to make a difference. And I think, I really don't think that we have people who come in and say, I got to go to work today.
Yeah.
I truly believe that we've built a culture that has a team that feels invested and part of the challenges and part of the successes.
And in the early days, what was maybe the key hire? Was it a sales individual, or was it a marketing or finance? That'd be interesting to know kind of what kicked it off.
Definitely would have been finance and accounting.
Oh, wow. So you were running most of the sales. You were handling that part of it.
Yeah. I'm super passionate about product. I love sales. I always laugh and say like I'm a LinkedIn ninja, and I love the challenge of being able to connect and open doors. And, those are my strengths. And I definitely played towards those and brought someone into operations and finance and accounting where I needed them.
And what's interesting, that's great. I always waited too long on that end. And I think a lot of companies do, but it's great to have, sophisticated financials from the beginning. You guys scaled so quick. It sounds like that was probably a major need of the company.
Yeah. And we did a review the first year, and then we did annual GAAP audit.
Oh, wow. Good for you.
I know, we did. And, we did them because this was my first rodeo, and I wanted to make sure that we were dotting all I's and crossing all T's.
What a smart approach on your end. Because at first I always look at that and I'm like, they're going to cost that much? And you're like,
yeah,
you're always looking, but for you had the right attitude. For you, it was kind of like, I'm going to get assurance that things are being taken care of correctly on the financial side.
Yeah.
From a third party. I think that's really wise. That's a great viewpoint, especially from a younger and early entrepreneur to do that from the very beginning. I bet it's really rare. Maybe that was some guidance from your financial investor, or was that just something that you wanted to do?
I don't remember if there was. I'm sure there was someone who thought it would be a good idea. And really for me, it was just kind of the reassurance that everything was being managed appropriately and, learning. And if there's anything we could figure out, we could do better through that process, I think worth the money spent.
What a great story. Thanks for sharing that, Melissa. What's next for the company? I know you're working on another project.
Yeah, we just launched a commercial application side of the business called Packit Fresh. And it's our technology integrated into a more robust kind of supply chain tool. So a few years ago, I started getting a meal kit company delivered to the house, right? We live in this society of just the most convenience ever. And this meal kit delivery would come with a corrugate box and a huge Mylar insulated blanket and 2 6-pound gel packs. And then 2 days later, there'd be another corrugate box with a Mylar insulated blanket and 2 6-pound gel packs. And for me, I was really disturbed by this huge catastrophic pile of waste that was now growing in my garage. And I felt a responsibility to try and make a difference. And looking at what we had done in the consumer product side, really final mile cold chain for us at the time had been, how do we get fresh food from the refrigerator to the school lunch table or to the office table? And what these companies were struggling with was final mile cold chain. Their final mile looked a little bit different. It was, how do they get it from their kitchens, commissaries, distribution centers into the hands of consumers? and really recognizing that, with our technology, we could do that for them in a reusable, sustainable way that would eliminate all that one-time use expendable packaging. So we started working on that about 3 years ago. A year and a half ago, we launched really in meal kit and the home e-commerce home grocery delivery space. So we work directly with meal kit delivery companies on delivery. We work with e-commerce retailers on their e-commerce grocery delivery strategies. So basically with our technology, they can pick and pack their grocery orders directly into our freezable totes. And these freezable totes will keep food at food safe temperatures up to 15 hours and some up to 24 hours. So they can pick and pack their grocery orders in advance into our frozen totes. And this is a supply chain tool. So it's not intended for use by the consumer. They can now hold those grocery orders in advance, staged in just a room temperature environment without having to build out expensive refrigerators. So it brings a ton of efficiency to the supply chain for home grocery delivery. And then it's to the point where it's deployed with a driver on a route. They don't have to have refrigerated trucks. They can do ambient trucks with longer routes, more deliveries per route, getting it to the customer, as fresh as they intended it to be, and all in a reusable, sustainable way.
What a great idea. So the customer is not actually holding onto the bag. So this is like a B2B sale.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Wow. That is awesome. And how long have you been doing that for? And how's the business going?
We launched a year and a half ago. And then with COVID and, stay at home in play and the e-commerce grocery delivery industry absolutely exploding, it's been wildly successful. Some things just, you couldn't have timed this better, right? Like sometimes things just work out like that it's definitely fitting a need in an industry that really working on margin, like tiny, thin profitability margins. And they're looking for any way to bring in efficiencies to become more profitable with this new taste and appetite for home delivery that, even once we return to pre-COVID type environments, that lifestyle of convenience and home delivery really is here to stay.
Yeah, no, that's a huge, it was going to win anyways, but then, COVID just, ratcheted up and, up into the right, I'm sure. What a great idea. I'm sure the audience can totally picture this, but this whole industry has taken off and you've been able to kind of just get right in the middle of it. So congrats on that move. That's got to be exciting.
Thank you.
And it's the same team or is it a totally different company?
It's under our parent company, Packit, but it is run as a separate company. It's called Packit Fresh.
Yeah, that's great. Awesome. Well, thanks again for sharing the story and your insights. And I know they're going to resonate with the listeners here. How can listeners find you or learn more about you and your company?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for having me. This is awesome. I always love connecting with other industry insiders and sharing stories. Always insightful for me also. So you can find our Packit, the consumer products at Packit, just PACKIT.com. And then the commercial side of the business is Packit Fresh. And that's just Packit, PACKITFRESH.com.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing the story. And also just so the audience knows, I want to give a little plug to IHA and the Inspired Home Show. Melissa and myself are both board members. So saw her on the last meeting and we moved the show. The IHA show is so important. And as Melissa mentioned, she, launched the brand from the show. It's in Chicago, usually every March. Obviously, COVID has impacted that and it's moved to August of 2021. So just want to give it a plug and everybody can keep an eye out for that. And I hope to see many of you attending the show. And also want to thank everybody for listening to this episode of the Page One podcast sponsored by Retail Band. Again, if you're looking for someone to custom strategic plan, help you grow sales digitally, and also someone who can show your team how to execute, that's what we do. And you can find me on LinkedIn or at luke@retailband.com. Hope you enjoyed the interview today. Truly appreciate your reviews on iTunes. They really mean a lot. And hope you join us for the next interview. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Page One podcast with Luke Peters. If you enjoyed this episode, please help us out by leaving us a rating on iTunes. Want to double your online sales? Check out www.retailband.com. And don't forget to join us next week with our next amazing guest.